We just hired a full-time grocery shopper because if you look at either of our menus, it's the craziest thing is when we go to the international market, the test of a truly international restaurant is when the person at the register is like, "What are you buying? Like, why do you have like fufu and you also have like shrimp paste? None of this doesn't make any sense." And you're like, "Yeah, that's cool. It's a good sign."
Welcome everyone to the Restaurant Roundtable.
We're a support group for restaurant owners.
By restaurant owners.
Brought to you by Kraft Heinz.
All season long, we discuss the
Challenges, opportunities,
The good taste.
and the bad taste within the industry.
and we're your hosts. I'm BJ.
I'm Shanika.
I'm Jamar.
I'm Kate.
I'm Abishar.
So, if you're a chef, an owner,
Or aspiring to be one.
You're going to want to pull up a chair to this round table.
welcome back to the Restaurant Roundtable, brought to you by Kraft Heinz, a podcast by chefs for chefs, where we talk about all the fun things in the restaurant industry. Today's episode is a really fun one. It is about menus and when to change them, how to change them, all the things surrounding our food and our drink offerings. Before we jump into that, we wanted to introduce a segment called Ketchup of the Day. We've been joking about how we can incorporate Kraft Heinz in a little bit more, and we haven't really seen each other that often, so we want to all catch up. The how are you part of the episode. So, Jamar, what do you have to catch us up on?
I'd like to give a special mention to Avery Frost because she provided funding through Freedom Equity to help us grow our business when we had problems raising money. So I wanted to give a special shout out to her and go see her if you need funding for any of your ventures. Avery Frost.
Avery Frost?
I'll catch up for the day.
So it's football season, and that means that I am, my business is picking up because I make cakes for the club and suite level of the local football team.
Who is the local football team?
OSU Buckeyes.
OSU Buckeyes.
Oh, congratulations.
That's awesome.
Abishar, what's your catch-up of the day?
Well, we are not as exciting as the Buckeyes, which I am an alumni of, OH. Yeah, there we go. Enough. Yeah. However, yes, we decided to finally, after a year, launch our patio menu. We've been struggling for a while on how to do it with our tasting menu style restaurant. And we came to a conclusion that we wanted to try something new, like we call it a veranda menu, because in India and Bangladesh,
classy.
we have verandas. We don't have patios, we have verandas. So we also didn't know the word for upper versus lower patio, so veranda seemed right.
How's it going?
It's fun. It feels like, I think one of the things about the season, about autumn specifically in the Midwest, is people just want to be outside. So it's just nice to see people feel more natural outside. It's no matter what you do, whenever you're outside, you feel it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's not 100 degrees out anymore. It's our season. Shanika, what's your catch-up of the day?
So we just completed our third
Home game.
home game at
At
the Ohio State Stadium for the Buckeyes. So will we have three more? Three down, three more to go?
Yep. Well, they have 8 this year, so 5 more.
5. Okay. See how much I know about football.
Mine is like Abishar. We launched a new menu. We've been kind of circling this for a long time, but at Chapman's Eat Market, we launched Chappy Hour, which is our version of happy hour. So we brought back our famous burger for 1 hour a day.
Do you get it for free if you wear chaps?
Ooh, hadn't thought of that. I don't even know that I know what chaps are. So
I'll show
they
you.
just
Oh,
shorts?
chips.
No.
Cowboy pay. Yes, yes. Cowboys
when you wear
them. Yes,
golfing?
oftentimes the rear is
like
exposed.
leather chaps.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, those are the things that the YMCA guys that sung that song. They wore chaps.
We have 2 people talking about new menus, so let's make that our whole conversation today. I'd love to talk about how and when you want to evolve your menus. If we could start by dialing in with how much do trends affect your menus?
That's an interesting question. I feel like for food, trends like social media trends, stuff like that, don't affect us all that much. I feel like for beverages, really where we see those trends coming in. People coming in and asking for an espresso martini, for instance, is a big one, or like a spicy margarita is having a moment right now, and you'll get people coming in and asking for that by name. I feel like people understand that food menu is like the food menu a little bit more. With our team, we didn't want to just do like a standard espresso martini, so it was a little bit of a challenge to the bartenders to be like, do a creative version of this. So at Ginger Rabbit, for instance, they did one with tequila that they call the cafecito, that is essentially a espresso martini build, but in our own little way. So I think that's how we kind of deal with those specific challenges, like from guests to us, to stay on trend.
And we've had a similar experience where we'll have guests come in, and the lemon drop is very popular, especially amongst females. And it's traditionally made with a citrus vodka, but the latest trend is tequila. So if they ask, we can make it, and we haven't added it to the menu, but we treat it as like a feature.
And to the food aspect, just a Cooper Sharp, back to that again, as far as the cheese, it's a big thing in Philly now where they added the cheesesteak. So it's a trend and we want to pick up on it. And actually, it's very tasty. So it's a nice, like American cheese with a taste of provolone. So
Are you replacing what you already have on the menu, or is this an
add-on? We'll do it as an add-on.
Don't know until you try it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see you as maybe not responding to too many trends in your restaurants, but perhaps setting them up.
I disagree with that. 100% disagree with that. I do watch a lot of YouTube. I do read a lot of books. I have cousins, and half our staff is, what is it now, Gen Z, or what is, I'm not sure which ones are on right now. So I'm certainly aware of all those things. And I actually try to embrace them, but I embrace them as patterns. If somebody wants to feel something and you're all going on, and we just talked about football season, like, is it wrong to suggest that maybe it's time to address some of the things that could fall into seasonality as well too? Because trends can be seasonal, trends can be paternal, it can be any sort of sequence can create a trend. So we don't just look at the specific trend, because what we know is if somebody's already done it, they're pretty good at it. You listed a few things, but what are some other trends, or what are some other influences that might affect when you want to change your menu? Do you have anything that really drives your new menu?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. We talked about it in our very first episode, but our menu is very inspired by our team, our staff. So a lot of what we do is things that people have had in their childhood or through their travels. But specifically, like the moment that we know that it's time to change the menu is we cook very seasonally. So as things go out of season, that's a big driver of our menu. We know what's kind of coming up locally and seasonally, so we can be like, okay, we're almost into kale season. So what can we do with kale? That's kind of a bad example because kale's kind of always around, but yeah, those are some of the things that drive the menu. And then also cost. There's certain things that are just out of this world expensive right now that it's not because the dish isn't good. It's not because guests aren't enjoying it. It's just like, I don't feel comfortable having this particular item on the menu for $25 because we can't afford to do it for any less. So those are some of the driving factors.
Well, let me ask you a
seen.
question for both of you guys, and maybe this relates to you, Kate. When does your ego get involved with the menu as far as, I love this dish, this is my creation, it's not doing well, needs to go? Does ego ever get involved with your menu? Or?
Yeah, I think that as much as people try to say, like, kill your ego, it's still there a little bit. And there's certain ways that I look at our menu as a whole, where it's like every dish has like its own little like slot on the menu that is important to have variety. You know, we have a small menu, it's 15 items. So you don't want two dishes that are both flounder or something like that. However, if it's my dish, it's sometimes really hard to like let go of it. And I know for other people, if they put a dish on the menu and I'm like, all right, it's time to get rid of the corn cake or whatever, it's like, I'm so sorry to you because it's your dish, you know, that's now going away. So I think that is a consideration of like who came up with it, why it's there, and it's almost like somebody's idea and identity is getting pulled out of our matrix.
And I know you love the scientific method about everything, but does your ego ever get involved with this?
I mean, the ego is always involved. It's to answer your question, because technically I'm the driver of the restaurant, so I have to make the executive decision. So if it's not for me, then who will make the decision? If I don't make the decision, somebody who may not be reading the whole book, just reading a chapter, might have to make the decision. So two different perspectives. We have two restaurants. One of them is a tasting menu. So does a menu change mean you change the entire menu of 15 courses? Does it mean you keep some? It's really hard. Like, I don't know the answer to some of these things. We're learning along the way. There's some stuff that we only find out through experimentation by removing it. Someone comes and says, hey, if there's no shot on your menu, we're not coming back. And we believe them because the way they look at us, like the way they just Like it's terrifying. You don't want that. You don't want somebody like breaking down your window because you don't have chot on the menu. And that's one of those things that wasn't our plan, but it's how we adapted. That was one of the dishes that even our menu to begin with, we didn't know what we were doing. We're just like, let's just give everyone everything, right? See what sticks, see what doesn't. And now that we've doubled our courses, it's becoming more of a factor because our team does contribute to our menu and might know a different way to do something that's probably more effective, yes, but then how are we learning if I'm not allowing for mistakes on the menu? Our menu is full of mistakes. It has to be because that's the only way we get better. And I think to introduce that is just as the audience says, like we used to get from our guests within the first 2 months. We said, when are you changing your menu? And I was like, dude, like this is like a 7-year research process to make these items and you want to change it like that. And my question is, do I reinforce the dish, make it better, or do I change it fully? And it just depends every single time.
I think you need a ego to be successful, even in business, period. You have to have an ego.
Kate, what do you think about production
For
baking?
sure.
So like when you have your volume is insane and you offer these select products to so many people in so many different restaurants. So does your client's ego overpower your ego, or what's like, do you base it off your technical level, or how do you decide?
There are some items that we just cannot stop making. And that's just because we have such a high demand. There is a limit to how much that's possible right now in our current facilities and with our current staffing. So I'm really cognizant of our limitations before I start considering the next product offering. We do regularly get requests for specific items. I know everybody locally wants a local burger bun, and that's just not something that I think I have the staff that would have I don't even know if interest is the right word. I could develop a burger bun that would be great. I don't know if we could meet the demand in a way that I would be proud of. I do think that my staff skill level determines also what I'm willing to offer. There's a limit to how much I can train on new items while meeting our existing demand. So for me, it's really a balance of all of the requests that I'm getting for new product items, but also what my staff is capable of in our current production schedule.
I think that's a really interesting point because we've found that too, where it's like the R&D process, which is an important one. And I've worked at restaurants that don't do R&D at all. It's just like pure vibes. This is going on today. I hope it's good. And, we count on like our skill and our guile to make it work. And then other times in the way that we run Chapman's is everything is R&D meticulously. And it's one of those things where like I can make ravioli and I can make this dish really good. It's how can you train your staff to do it? And it's one of those things like when I worked at Husk, I felt like anyone who worked at Husk and didn't walk out knowing how to butcher, it was like a lost opportunity. And I feel like every restaurant like has those things that are big time. You need to do it like a million times to get good at it. So for you, it's a very...
And shaped breads.
Exactly. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to do and it gets messed up a lot. So like, how do you balance like your ideas with the level at which people can execute your ideas?
Right.
And we don't have a huge ego, but a huge menu, but Shanika, do you think my ego prevents us from adding new things sometime?
Yes.
That's why I asked
Is
that.
it
It was
customers that
rhetorical.
Guess I'll be on the couch tonight. But
Are the
It was rhetorical. I knew what she was going to say.
Are the customers asking for the changes and you don't want to make them, or?
I believe in my product so strongly that sometimes my ego gets in the way where I say, absolutely not.
and I would say it would be
And
It's
only
not
because
because the
she's my
customer's
wife
me.
and
Yeah.
it's repercussions do I listen
Yes.
to her.
yes.
That I know she's like, let's try this. And I'll say no, and then I'll think about it and I'll say, yeah, honey, I want to get off this.
And I think some of my background, because I come from a retail background. So one of the lessons that I had to learn early on was that you had to take yourself out of the equation and just think about the customer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this the right thing for the customer? You personally might not like polyester, but the customer does.
Mm-hmm.
Or you might not like pleats, but the customer is asking for pleats.
I think
And
that's going with it.
it's the right thing to do. So
There's a trend sometimes too, right? We can go full circle in the beginning and say, what do they actually want or what has been trained to them? And it is kind of our job to respond. That's really I just learned so much. It's kind of wild, but thinking about that, and I think we're probably going to ask next is like, what makes a menu change? I think with this, what I realized sparks my menu change is when our staff is when they've gotten so good at something, it's time to throw something new at them. Because there's always more learning to do in our job as having an ego is, we have an ability to say, for instance, can I deep fry mayonnaise? Certainly I can deep fry mayonnaise.
Well, let me ask you this, though. If you have something that's super successful on your menu, at what point do you know that you might have to go away from it or change it? Or do you just keep it?
I think success is a tough word to describe because I might have more knowledge of a product. So for instance, if I've researched something meticulously from its history to where it is right now, I could argue that it's successful in authenticity. But successful, I think, is a combination of, is it satisfying our need to create? Is it satisfying our guest demand? Is it helping push the food scene forward in Columbus? Is it a little bit more, it's got to offer something more. It can't just be an item, like a food item. It's got to have a story, a history, a pattern, a trend. It's influenced by so much stuff. It's like, a recipe or a dish is just a frame of somebody's life. It's not their entire existence.
I want to argue with you just a little bit because we've had this problem when we've worked together in a kitchen.
We've worked together. We're working against each other most of the time, but yeah.
Okay, when we worked against each other in the same kitchen. But we had a goal. We needed to increase traffic to our business. We needed to increase ticket totals. But our biggest seller was a burger. It was the most accessible item, and
Tacos were the most accessible item. The brisket crunch was the number one. And that started off as a kind of a, no, I'm not doing that. This is just going to be some junk I throw. And I was like, oh crap, it's getting popular. So it was yeah. It was not the burger. It was definitely the brisket crunch. Yes.
But we definitely struggled with what we were trying to make. People wanted to order that burger because it was the most accessible thing on that menu. And we wanted people to try all of the other options that we had available and give other things a chance.
Yeah, it's a gateway, I think. Yeah. Like sometimes you go to a place and you're like, ooh, I want to try that, but you got to get the foot in the door first. And I think we can all agree a burger is a pretty easy thing to do. It's got a hand, and our fries, are super easy to make fries. That was also part of the equation that involved a lot of labor. But, we never touted our burger as like, this is a really...
Lying about the super easy to make the fries.
I was going to say, something tells me that they're more difficult than any other fries.
But to the point is, when do we say we can stop being creative? Because if our answer was, if our sandbox was we're going to make a burger because one of the owners wants a burger, and two, I know that people will come in and order a burger, I can say, hey, my ego is so good, I'm not going to serve a burger. I'm better than a burger. I worked at these Michelin star restaurants. Why do I need to serve a burger? Or I can say, am I going to make this the best, most personal burger I could ever create? That's very unique to me. There was a lot that we had to do to get just a burger on the plate for a reasonable price. So I don't know why we choose to look down on these sorts of things. But with an item like that, we inputted our creativity. We messed with the sauce in the way that we could. We took something familiar. We made it still a burger. We said it has to look, feel, see like a burger, and then let's just make it ours after that. And we were very proud to serve it, and it evolved. Mm-hmm. Why not? Those are changes to a menu item that never changed as an item, but we kept improving. So.
I think, I was going to say, I think to your point of when do you know that it's time to take a dish off? There is such a thing as a successful dish or something that becomes so intrinsic to your restaurant. We have a few of those dishes that, it's so interesting. The creativity at the beginning of the restaurant ends up being something that's so indelible to what we do that we can't change this. And for us, it's the General Tso's cauliflower, which was one of our old sous chef Matt's dishes that we literally did as a vegan dish so that we had something that vegans could have on our menu at that time. And it ended up being our most popular seller. It still is to this day, our most popular.
Okay.
Well, it's almost like we can't take it off. I can take it off if I want to, but I feel that there would be public backlash on that. And I think that that's a problem with kind of what it is that we're talking about is when is it time to take a dish off the menu? Is it when we're bored with it, or is it when the guests are bored with it? Who do we really work for here? And, I think part of us want to be it's about us and it's about our staff. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's about the customer. The customers are not sick of that cauliflower yet. So much so that at our event space, people want us to do the cauliflower here from Chapman's, and it's am I going to say no?
I think our rule that we made was if we take this ridiculous amount of time to make this dish, and we made it a million times, and we see it, and we're like, where's this go? What we would do is we'd eat the dish, and the day that it stopped getting interesting in our mouth, that's when it comes off. We're like, I don't want to eat this anymore. That is
or we would make it tweak. Yeah. We would, I'm trying to think, we did that pork shank for a long time. And
Oh, God, it's hard.
when it got exhausted, like I was tired of making it, I was tired of prepping it. But when we would eat it, we'd be like, oh, this would be so much better if we just changed these two components. And so then we started to do a little bit of creativity within the bounds of, kind of has to look like this in the end, but what can we do to make it so that we're not bored with it anymore?
Well,
Once we got rid of it, it was
how about
good.
you guys? I mean, your bread and butter is cheesesteaks. How do you keep that fresh? And how do you, like your core cheesesteaks, do you change them ever? Will they stay the same? How do you feel about changing the menu?
I'm thinking about maybe adding some different cheeses, cheesesteak, egg rolls. My wife suggested a buffalo chicken that we
We had
added.
added that.
So we have salmon cheesesteak. So we're still adding, it's different versions, different inspirations that we will have to kind of.
Do you take something off the menu every time that you put something on, or is the menu just getting larger at this point?
It's getting larger.
What is the most expensive thing that you're doing? Like, is it the training or is it the reprinting of menus? Like, what would prevent you from continuing to just add and add?
So
Ingredients.
yeah, it would be ingredients.
Because ribeye is starting to go through the roof. It's starting to be a shortage on beef.
And then like printing is definitely an expense. So at one location, we actually added a digital menu board. So as we make changes, to transfer out a picture,
Yeah, instead of reprinting.
instead of reprinting, we also added in magnetic strips. So if we were to change a price, they have special little stickers that you can just put over top of the existing price. So that's a cost-effective measure
I want to add
to
an
take.
oxtail cheesesteak bad, but the oxtails
Now
are
that
so
would require a
expensive.
lot of training. Now that would require
We can charge
a lot of
$1 for that. Yes, we're there.
Can I get that?
That's
Maybe with a little oxtail
it's
mac
on
and
the trend.
cheese.
It's trending in
Yeah.
Philly. Oxtail cheesesteak. So
I
Might
feel like we
become-
know what we're cooking for
Do
our
you
next
remember when
lunch
oxtail
here.
used to be really
Oh, was he?
cheap?
say what?
It's like one of
Yeah,
the
we can
most
light up the fire. Let's go.
What do you all think of it just came up I think in the conversation, and sorry, just these things are like really exciting like nucleation points, but we were just talking about what it means to change a menu, and so many people think like, oh, I got this idea and it's done.
Yeah.
They don't think about you got to like, how does the guest know you have a new menu? Like how do you guys like, what's the process like?
Yeah, the pointer. And then, when it's time when you're making the decision to change the menu, I think you have to lay out all of the components that go into it, because that's a process. So, it's like, okay, it's time to change. Okay, well, what do I do first?
Yeah, and
You
I
know,
think you probably have the experience if you have an international staff and like, hey, tomorrow we're going to start using gochujang. And you're like, well, Cisco doesn't carry that, so we're going to have to go to the
Yeah.
Asian market. We have to go and buy this gochujang. Like,
We go to the international grocery at least twice a week. There's an ongoing text chain of everything that we need up until the point that it's time to go.
we just hired a full-time grocery shopper because it's because if you look at either of our menus, it's the craziest thing is when we go to the international market, the test of a truly international restaurant is when the person in the register is like, what are you buying? Like, why do you have like fufu and you also have like shrimp paste? So none of this doesn't make any sense. And you're like, yeah, that's cool. It's a good sign. But it's those changes are tough. Like,
Well, with me, if I develop a new product, there's a really long period of time before I'm able to actually sell it. And I find that incredibly frustrating. And I'm trying to figure out how to make that work better for me. But for me, because it's regulated by not the health department, but there's labeling components for some of this, I have to go through about a 3 to 4 week process before I can finish all of my R&D. Like, I'm absolutely going to sell this. Before I can put it in the thing, it's just so many steps dependent on other people. And I find that really
And
frustrating.
people never kind of think about the logistics that go
Yeah.
in.
It's a little
after.
bit stifling for like
Just
the
can't
creative
change anything,
thing.
and it's on the menu the next day. It's
That's
a
a
whole bunch of
really good
things.
point that I never even thought of. Is you're not governed by the local health department. You're governed by
It's a department.
The ODA.
Yeah,
Yeah, agriculture.
And there's all different sorts of rules and regulations.
Past that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just a different experience. I find it incredibly frustrating. In some ways, I feel like it's stifling, but it ends up making me look for other outlets that I can start to get immediate feedback and figure out what I want to
And
change.
that goes back to our point of being resilient.
Yeah.
but would you say
Can't
that
say
also
can't stop.
reinforces your ability as a menu changer to say that I can, because as independent restaurants, one of the things that I wouldn't say we fight, but makes independent is like, see something that's being done so much, you're like, I don't want it. I I want my own twist on it. I want to not offer it this consistent. There's like a tension between young and like kind of wild and mature and like stable, right? And you're hitting the center point where you're saying, I got to do all these ingredients, I got to do all these steps, and I have to create something that by the time it touches all these hands, is it still the original idea that I had? And it seems, in your case, you're still motivated. So the ego is it, right? Like, it's like the ego's got to push through everything. Like, it's what keeps you strong when everything else is against you, because you can't just serve it. It's,
Yeah, I'm absolutely not jumping on trends. That's not something that is not something I'm doing. But it does push me to try and figure out what might be starting a trend, or what might be on the front end of the pattern. You were talking about looking for patterns, what flavors are interesting, and I don't see them everywhere. And I'm willing to be able to invest the time and energy and money, because now I'm buying a large amount of packaging. Now I'm investing a lot before I sell that first one. And that's a little bit scary, and it's fun and different, but it's not relatable for this conversation in the same way. Although there is rewriting menus, getting them printed, like that's still similar, but you can't just run a special. I can't just run a special.
But trends are not for everyone.
Right.
So I think people, if don't feel bad if you can't go after a certain trend. It might not be for you, and that's okay. So that's not. It's not an indicator that your business is going to sell because you missed out on this trend.
Well, it's an interesting thing that Avishar just mentioned about gochujang. I think like 5-6 years ago, especially in a place like Columbus, no one would have heard of gochujang. It's something we've been cooking with probably for
high school, yes.
And yeah, exactly. Like we had that in our pantry when I was a kid, but it's almost like sometimes trends aren't a bad thing because it brings something that is a little bit more mainstream into the mainstream. And the fact that we can put gochujang fried chicken on our menu now and people aren't like, what is this word, is really cool. So it's not necessarily chasing like
I think you're saying gochujang, by the way, not gochujang. So thank you for taking it's not yet. But yes.
Well, we won't have to worry about a Marlowe's hot chicken cheesesteak. We're not chasing any hot chicken trends or anything else. So we don't have to
Let's
worry
talk
about
about
Chopped chicken
that.
and cheese. Chopped chicken and cheese sounds good to me. It's all I'm saying. If you did a bulldog chopped cheese, I'm there. So, that's
I mean, it is funny because like whatever, a lot of these trends, as we say, are like comfort foods to somewhere where it's like, why did this all of a sudden go like global when it's like, this is the stuff that I've been eating since I was in elementary school.
Generally, it's because it's relatable.
ramen.
There's also a lot of like algorithm, but algorithm is based on relatable, right? So it's like, it's got to be relatable for everybody's got to be like, you had that moment, you see this thing, and like you have a young cook and they give you this thing, you're like, what are you doing? I saw this on TikTok, I'm not going to eat this thing. You put it in your mouth and you're like, damn it, that's good. Like, like so you have the moment, you're like, I see what you're talking about, because we have a little bit of that inside of us too, where it's like stubborn, we're stubborn, we're old these days.
All right, I love the discussion that we've been having, and we do have an outside question I want to pose to everyone. What happens when a critic comes in, or a very vocal guest, and they don't like the changes? They think that something is missing. What do you do?
Well, speaking of ego, I think that's probably like the most ego-bruising thing that can happen is you put a new dish on and immediately someone's like, I don't like it for X, Y, and Z reason. I feel like menu change day is always the most nerve-wracking one, like the first dish to go out and waiting for that feedback. But I think it happens because people are somewhat afraid of change. And I think that for restaurants that are really established, if you take off something that's a fan favorite, you're just going to piss people off. And we kind of have a rule that you don't take things off unless what you're replacing it with is better, but that's objective. So I feel like everyone's going to be opinionated, and you kind of just need to do your best and roll with it and not take it personally. It happens. I don't know.
We had someone come in that had a huge following, and he didn't care for the buffalo chicken. So the first thing I kind of did was look at ourselves, look within. Did we do something wrong? Did we miss something? And came to find out our kitchen staff had over-drenched the buffalo sauce. So that was a teaching moment. And so sometimes constructive criticism or people not liking anything, some things that you do kind of makes you look in the mirror and do some self-evaluation. So I think that's a good thing too.
That's really important to learn from mistakes. Yeah.
So you take the good with the bad, and you're making the changes for obvious reasons. Some people are going to be okay with it, and some people are not going to be okay with it. So So just finding that balance and learning and make adjustments when necessary.
Sorry, I'm still experiencing PTSD from the last. I had to think of just now back to earth. Yes, I'm an expert of having people crap on stuff that I make. So it's from childhood to my parents. And I'm just kidding. It's something that you kind of grow used to over time. And then what I try to do is I try to just reference the point of what was said to where we were trying to go and see if there's a disconnect. So, for instance, we wanted to do this. Or in the classic example, hey, this beef dish, it's I don't like the way you're serving it. It's too raw. And you say, well, this is carpaccio. It's supposed to be raw, right? So there's some of that. But within that, generally what you'll find is there's a mix of objectivity and emotion, because food is emotional. And the opinion is what you do have to listen to, because you do have to validate how somebody feels. Whether it's for good or bad reasons, they didn't say that. And you can say, okay, cool, I heard you. And I still have a voice too.
I would much rather someone tell me face to face than just like wake up to like Yelp review or something like that. That's like, you could have told us that the pasta was too salty. You would have fixed it in the moment.
And that's why I like what people like.
Or that the buffalo chicken was.
Some of the things that we do is actually, Kate is familiar with this, is when we try to roll out a new menu, which is, we pre-plan it, it never works out according to plan, and then we just throw it at the wall and it comes out. It's kind of this is the way it works. And is training ever enough? It's never enough training, because things change. And they change depending on people's responses. Like the person from outside that said, hey, the portioning wasn't right for me. I have some diners come in and I give them a notebook and I say, just write whatever. And you don't even have to pay for your meal. The most valuable thing I can get out of you is your opinion right now. And when you put it that way, people really start to think about what they're saying. Like they're like, oh, what can I offer to make this better? Because I'm saying I'm willing to hear you and do what you're asking me to do, but you got to write it down.
That's a really good idea.
It's like your ego. Initially, the first couple times, your ego's like, "Oh God," like you're like, "That's the book." But after the third or fourth time, you're like, "Oh, we can get so much better, so much faster." Because that's what it's about, right? It's not about like, "Hey, this." It's like, "Hey, we wanted to change it because we want to make it better, not worse." I think most of us want to make it better, unless we're working for a terrible business owner who we want. That's as your own business owner. It's like it's one of those interesting things that it finds traction in both our community and like my family, because they love to have an opinion, and you get to give them the platform for that. It also gives you, like Kate's husband's professor. So he's got some really nice things to say that can be his own opinion, and some things that could probably be backed by science. So it's really cool to have that perspective to decide, hey, this is a change. And I think earlier you were saying there's so many steps to change. It's not just like I got an idea, it's on the menu tomorrow. It used to be when we were younger, we've done that stuff before. It's like, oh, I made that once, I'll never be able to make that again. But now it's like, when it's put out, it's been done probably 10,000 times before. And now it's out and it's still not right.
It's about to get spicy. It's almost time for our final course today, which is dessert. But first, we're going to dish out some hot takes. It's time for overdone, underdone. I'm going to just give a few items, and I'd love for you to give me your spiciest take on it, how you feel about it. So we have QR codes for menus.
I hate them.
Overdone.
Overdone.
It's not that I hate them, I hate how they're executed. They make sense to me, but like if you're in a dark place and you can't and then my parents, you're trying to get them to use QR codes to order food, like what?
Yes.
They get so mad.
I love when we go out to eat and there's a menu that I feel like there's this tactile thing, and maybe sometimes when it's a special event, like it's a souvenir also. I'm not stealing menus. I'm taking it with permission.
but then by dinner, I think the QR codes make sense, because you can order everything at once. But for like sit down dinner, I'm against.
Yeah.
Although, I would say the counterpoint is if you're in any country like outside of America, like in China, you can WeChat and order your entire, they have it dialed in so well that you would be like, wow, that's awesome. I just think it's executed poorly in America right now.
What about separate kid menus?
Underdone.
We have no feelings on those.
Underdone.
I think it's underdone.
I say underdone to that.
I think you should go to eat more,
Yeah.
I have one.
What's that?
Restaurant conglomerates. Overdone, underdone.
I don't think I can afford having an opinion about that.
What would you define as conglomerate? It was just so for a reference, so I can give if you give me an example.
Are you coming after Abshar is what he said?
Once you have more than three.
The restaurant groups, like 50, 60, 70.
I think it depends. I think if we know what we're getting ourselves into and our expectations are on par with what it is that we're getting, then cool. But if quality suffers because you've overexpanded, I would say overdone. but like,
I think maybe a good middle point is I think people think like you did something really awesome last year at 50 and they didn't think about what it takes to get to 50.
Yeah.
That's maybe overdone as opposed to like, hey, I've had 3 for 10 years and now it's time that, we figure it out. Maybe
There's
that's
some
not-
restaurant groups that do a phenomenal job and still give you quality with each concept.
Yep.
So, it's just-
And I'm not sure if I'm asking this as a restaurant owner or as a potential diner, but what do you think about restaurant week menus?
I feel like overdone because I don't want to cheapen what we do for anybody, but I do understand the value of bringing in new clientele. So I'm like a soft overdone on that.
Yeah.
And over easy.
Yeah, no, an over medium.
If it's the high end restaurants, I would say underdone. The ones that are more like fast casual, some of the menu selection for Restaurant Week, you could tell that they're doing it just to draw traffic. And the menu is not compelling. Mm-hmm. So I would say overdone.
I think that Restaurant Week potentially brings in diners that are not your target market. And so,
But is that a good thing or a bad thing?
not a good thing. What about you?
I thought I escaped the question.
Okay. Do you want me
The
to switch?
diplomat in me must have come out.
Quick, switch.
Historically, yes, I would say overdone because I've never partaken as an owner and somebody that's ever been a chef. I've never partaken in it because I saw what it did to the staff. That's not saying that I think it's a bad idea. I think it'd be cool to have a restaurant's input on Restaurant Week. I think if we did Restaurant Relief Week, where after Restaurant Week, we gave half off to everybody in the industry because they had to put up with Restaurant Week. I think that's a good idea. I don't know. So, giving, how about this? Helping out other people in the industry, overdone or underdone. Like your
Oh.
staff, people that are trying.
We should do more.
So underdone.
Overdone.
We got an agreement. Yes.
Ooh, I think we should wrap it there. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Delicious discussion today. Before we clear the table, it's time for dessert, where everyone gets to share their parting thoughts. Is there one thing that you're taking away from this meeting? Or is there one thing you're going to take away from this that you'll incorporate into your own businesses?
I think that considering our guests as well as our staff in those menu change ideas and taking like our ego out of it is really my big takeaway from today. And I feel like subconsciously we do that, but now having a little bit more focus on like actually having that as a mission and menu changes is something I'm taking away from today for sure.
I figured out how to get off to the sofa now. My ego was had me on the sofa. I took from this that I need to listen a little bit more. Changes in the menu and her suggestions. So, happy wife, happy life.
I can't wait for our episode about relationships in the workplace.
I would say a parting thought for me would be to embrace change. Change is a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And just treat it as a learning. And then you can still make changes and stay true to who you are.
I learned the opposite of what I thought. Generally, I thought I was like, we're refraining from having an ego, but now that we've all sat together, and I was like, oh, well, kind of the only thing that we have left when everything else is taken is your ego. So you should take care of yourself. Like you should, it's always going to be your vision, your mission. You started it. When all this stuff happens and all this change happens, you have to be present. Like you have to be, you can't lose yourself because then we become that conglomerate I think you're talking about. So maybe value the ego more, not necessarily let it dominate conversation, but to be aware that it exists.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
As you might expect, the opinions that we express on this podcast are just that, opinions and for entertainment purposes only.
If you love this podcast, help us out.
Give us a thumbs up.
Also, be sure to go to craftheinzawayfromhome.com and sign up for our newsletter.
So remember, if you liked what you heard today,
Please head over to craftheinzawayfromhome.com and sign up.
We have got all sorts of exclusives coming with special insights, access to marketing, and a lot more.
Of course, subscribe, share, like, all those things. See you next time.